Hello, welcome back to the Live from This podcast. I can't believe November's already halfway done, but we're marching along in the year. I'm going to be covering a couple of things on this podcast. I want to cover the Sotheby's Important Watches auction that took place last week. In our last podcast, we covered Phillips, we covered Antiquorum, and Christie's. But the Sotheby's auction had not taken place when we recorded that podcast, so I wanted to go over the Important Watches auction that took place on November the 9th. I'll then briefly discuss the GPHG awards that happened last week, which were a really great success. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be in Geneva for them, but it was great to be able to watch them online, and some real winners that I'll be honest, I'm very proud of. And it was just a great event to see these watchmakers accomplish what they did. And then I'll also be talking about the Swiss watch exports for the month of September, which were released, or tell a very interesting story about what Swiss watches have done this year. So, as I mentioned, the first topic we're going to be discussing is the Sotheby's Important Watches auction. This was a live auction that took place in Geneva on November 9th. To the way that they describe it is Sotheby's is thrilled to present our important watch auction in November, encompassing highly attractive and collectible watches from renowned makers such as Patek Philippe, Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, and Cartier. It further includes both vintage and contemporary pieces from various makers, as well as independent brands like F.P. Journe. The variety of watches that they sold were actually really great to look through. What was quite cool in my mind was they didn't start with a Rolex Oyster Perpetuals with the interesting dial colors. They did have one of these, one of these watches that did sell at their auction, and I will get the price for you right now because it's an interesting comparable with the other watches. But they didn't start with those watches, but they did have lot number 142, which was the Oyster Perpetual Tiffany Blue Dial, reference 124300. It was estimated to go between 30 and 40,000. It went for 31,500. I believe the one at Phillips went for around the same, and then the one at Christie's went for about 50,000. So difference in pricing for sure there. But their watch auction started off with a couple of modern Patek Philippe's. It then rolled into some vintage pieces that had some really great showings from A. Lange and Söhne, and of course brands like Rolex. One of the watches that was actually pretty cool is they had a reference 118206, which is a day date in platinum with a light blue dial from Rolex, and it went for $32,000 US. Really cool, smooth bezel, platinum case. It really is a beautiful piece. They had a nice range of Daytonas, Audemars Piguet, Royal Oaks. They had some Nautilus, I guess. Had some really cool Nautilus lots as well. So really cool watches that were sold. I'm going to call out two watches that I thought were quite interesting. Three watches that I thought were quite interesting during this auction. The first was lot number 90. This was a watch that I posted on my Instagram, on the Life from This Instagram. Which was a Patek Philippe reference 2570-1A, which was a yellow gold anti-magnetic watch from 1956. The first introduction of this reference was in 1958 and was one of the first amagnetic watches put into production by Patek Philippe. This was, of course, trying to combat the problem of magnetism with the accuracy of watches. Many of these came in stainless steel cases, but this one was actually in yellow gold, which was fairly rare. The watch was overall in really great condition. It's a time-only piece with applied hour markers, hours and minutes hand, and a sub-seconds. You then have Patek Philippe and Genève written at 12 o'clock, and below the Genève line is amagnetic. I loved the condition of the case. It was really in great condition. You could see a faint outline of the hallmark on the bottom right lug, which I thought showed that the watch was in fairly good condition as well. A beautiful piece, and a nice watch to pick up as an add to your collection, because I think it was another example of Patek Philippe safeguarding the innovations that they were able to do. The estimate was between 15 and 30,000 Swiss francs. This one actually sold for 82,200, which is a fairly large amount of money considering that it is a time-only Patek Philippe, but it is early technology for them to combat magnetism in watches. So if you didn't see pictures, there'll be links in the show notes to all these watches so that you can take a look. One of the hallmarks of this collection and was sort of the face of this important watches auction was lot number 95 from one of my favorite brands, and of course from the line of watches that I absolutely adore, and that is, it was a Vacheron Constantin Chocolatone, reference 4764. This was an extremely unique 4764 because it was a possibly unique platinum version of this triple date wristwatch, and dates to 1958. The Chocolatone has been produced. The Chocolatone is a very, very collectible grouping of watches. It sort of is in this square shape with soft edges. What makes it really stand out is this triple stepped case that it has. These were produced by Vacheron Constantin throughout their history and have been revitalized in their historique line. They produced these both in time-only versions, but they also produced these with a triple date or triple calendar complication. As I mentioned, and I'll sort of read through the description here that they give to this. So the present platinum version of the reference 4764 is to date the one and only piece referenced in the archives of Vacheron Constantin. It was sold in Athens, Greece in 1957 and is fresh to market, hence the first time in auction. This unique piece impresses by its sheer presence and strong proportions. It is furthermore offered with its original unrestored dial and a Vacheron Constantin certificate of authenticity. Without a doubt, this might be the only occasion for passionate collectors to attain such a historically significant timepiece, as a second opportunity might not appear so quickly again, if ever. What's cool, if you go to the link in the show notes, is they actually give a description of all the versions of the Chocolatone that had been produced, ranging from the first one, which was the 4737, leading up all the way to the reference 86300, which was in their historique collection in 2013. These are super popular with collectors, as you can imagine. It looks like it's called chocolatone because it looks like a little piece of chocolate. I personally imagine sort of like one of the Lindt squares, or if you like other chocolate brands, you can imagine just a little piece of chocolate that you'd be wearing on your wrist, this one being made out of platinum. This was an interesting lot because, as they mentioned, the dial is unrestored. However, it isn't in the all original sort of untouched condition that maybe some collectors would be looking for in a watch. There is some age on the dial. There is a fair amount of patina. You can also see some of the dates have sort of they're for lack of a better way of saying it, they're just coming off a little bit. There's quite a bit of wear to the moon phase at 6 o'clock. You can see in the day of the week and the month wheel that there's a little bit of wear around the outside. There's a decent amount of wear on the dial. So I think this watch, while pretty unique in its being a platinum version of this watch, is in condition for someone who likes the look of vintage and likes the a watch that's been worn. So I think it sort of narrowed the potential buyers a little bit because of its condition. The estimate for this watch is between 500 and 1 million Swiss francs. I think this is a fairly good estimate for this watch, considering the condition of its dial. I forgot to mention, the case looks in decent condition. I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhat polished. Given the state of the dial, I think it would be kind of unrealistic to think that the case hadn't been polished. It ended up selling for 604,800 Swiss francs, which I think is a reasonable price for this, considering the condition and the rarity of this piece. Even though it's a small subset of collectors who might be interested in it, it really is a significant watch in the history of the Cioccolatone, and I'm sure the collector is a very huge fan of this watch from Vacheron Constantin. And I won't lie, I'm jealous of whoever was able to buy it. So super excited for them, but a staple of this auction for sure. The last watch I just wanted to mention from the Sotheby's important watch auction was a very significant FP Journe. This was lot number 65. This was a Resonance pre-production in platinum with dual time zone wristwatch with power reserve indication and brass movement from 1999. As always, I'll just quickly touch on how Sotheby sort of describes this. So they sort of talk about the history of Journe and the Resonance, but they mention that Journe officially launched the Resonance in 2000 with a series of 20 pieces. They were numbered 1 to 20 and suffixed with 00R for 2000, the year in which they were made, and the cases. They were powered by a rhodium base plate movement, the caliber 1499, a feature that Journe replaced for 18 karat gold in 2003 and 2004. As such, it is estimated that fewer than 2,000 pieces were made with this early brass movement. They also exhibit a thinner font used on the power reserve indicator and two-tone subsidiary dials. So the first serial produced watch was in 2000, and so Sotheby's continues on to say that this watch, lot 65, however, is still rare. Is rarer still. The newly identified pre-production series in which this watch belongs is one of only approximately 10 pieces and represents the very first Resonance watches ever made. These pieces were exceptionally fitted into cases produced in 1999, the same year as the official launch of the FP Journe brand. They also share many of the same distinguishing characteristics of the pre-subscription and subscription examples. The pre-production Resonance, however, were suffixed with the /99R and started at numbers 21/99R due to the fact that the numbers were 1 through 20 were already reserved for their subscription production. On this basis, we can confirm that the present lot engraved 028-99R as the 8th Resonance ever to leave the Journe's workshop and likely made at the hands of Journe himself. And so, with all of that, I think this is a fairly good indication of how rare this specific watch is. You have a pre-production Resonance that was likely made by Journe himself, one of only 10. Did I say 10? I think I said 10. I want to make sure I don't misspeak here. 20. 10. I am right. It's one of approximately 10 of these pre-production watches that were ever sold and feature a brass movement, which is rare for Journe's for one to find a Journe of that with a metal of that with a movement of that metal. I apologize, tripping up on my words there. So for those who are interested in Journe, I think this is a very unique opportunity to own something extremely rare from the brand, and a very exciting lot. It was estimated to go between 500 and 1 million Swiss francs. It ended up going for just over 1 million Swiss francs, which I think shows the rarity, shows the collectability of Journes and the pre-production models that have come to market here. I highly doubt this will come to market anytime soon, but we'll have to see what happens later. A beautiful piece, huge fan of Journe, and a nice result for the Sotheby's important watch auction. So that's it. Some super cool watches that that ended up selling. I think it's a big accomplishment from Sotheby's to sell these watches, some beautiful watches that did sell. Congratulations, Sotheby's, on a great auction, and I'm looking forward to the ones later this month. We're going to move on to the GPHG award ceremony that took place last week. This was an incredible event hosted, I believe, on Friday of last week. And I believe it was Thursday. And I already covered GPHG on some past podcasts, so if you want to get some more information about some of the watches that were featured, you can check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes to the awards and who won each of the awards. I'm going to call out a couple because I think there were some really major accomplishments throughout this award ceremony. The first one I want to call out was the Audacity Prize, which went to the Octafinissimo Ultra 10th anniversary with the QR code. It's a revolutionary watch. I don't really have too much to say about it, but I think it shows that people still feel the Octafinissimo is an incredible piece of what watchmaking has been in the recent years. Of course, I'm going to speak about the Challenge Watch Prize, which went to the Mad Edition Mad 1 Red. I found this to be quite an interesting winner, not because I think the Mad 1 is anything worse than the watches that it was against, but there were some incredible watches in this Challenge Watch Prize category, but I was super excited to see them win this. It's very exciting to see MB&F really grow into this incredibly well-respected and well-followed now brand, and I think it just demonstrates what Max has been able to accomplish. I wanted to also call out the Voutilainen that won the Artistic Craft Watch Prize. This watch is I believe it's Jaiku or Jiku, is an absolutely crazy watch. It's one of the greatest lacquered artists of Japan. Tatsui Kitamura creates works of lacquered art that stand at the pinnacle of Japanese tradition. It brings a craft that has existed for hundreds of years into the present, exemplifying the passion to preserve the soul, spirit, and identity of a traditional Japanese culture as expressed in the Edo period. And so basically what this watch has is this incredible blue and green and yellow dial that has this Japanese lacquered finish by this incredible artsman. Kari Voutilainen also had a huge part to play in creating this piece. When you flip it over, you have an exceptionally well-constructed watch, beautiful finishing to it, and just something that is really something to be behold. It's a one-piece limited edition series, but I, as you probably can imagine, love that Kari Voutilainen is getting the credit where he deserves it. Max Buser has done a lot of work with him at MB&F, and so it was exciting to see him win that. I also wanted to call out the Chronograph Watch Prize, which went to the Grunefeld 1941 Chronograph Tantalum, which is, it's just, the Grunefeld brothers are geniuses. I think it's hard to describe them any way else. GPHG describes them as the horological brothers. It's a classic configuration with its column wheel and lateral coupling, a combination synonymous with high-end watchmaking. Its movement, the caliber G04, is a symphony of 408 parts, which not only encompass quality materials but also uphold the Grunefeld's no-compromise approach to finishing. When you flip this watch over, it has an exceptional construction that is unlike anything you'll probably see, and the finishing is just bar none. Many angles, many different sort of brush to almost like it looks like a matte finish to me, but it's obviously not. Really, really well constructed and finished movement. So it was nice to see them win it. It was also nice to see them go up to get the award together. They were so full of energy, and it was just nice to see. I'll briefly just quickly touch on, I'm glad H. Moser won the Tourbillon Watch Prize. Incredibly produced watch with so much depth in the construction of the movement, especially with the angles where there's basically no movement parts and you can see straight through. I'm obviously a huge fan of H. Moser. But really what I wanted to talk about was the Ogier d'Or, the grand prize that was given this year, was given to the MB&F Legacy Machine Sequential Evo. I was so excited that MB&F won 2 awards here. When this watch was actually part of the chronograph watch prize category, and so when Grunerfeld won it, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that MB&F didn't win that one. It's an absolute masterpiece. And then as the show went on, I started to think, oh wait, this actually might be up for the grand prize. And of course that ended up happening, and it was just so exciting that MB&F won it. One of the things that I think is so important about this watch winning, it shows the abilities of MB&F to bring together watchmakers who are exceptionally talented and create things that are essentially one of a kind. It also demonstrates the absolute genius of Steve McDonald. He's dedicated the last 5 years of his life to the LM Sequential Evo, as Max mentioned in his speech during the event. And so what he has created is there's no way to really put it in any other way besides the idea that this watch was essentially an unbreakable or the perfect chronograph movement ever produced. Might not be to your taste the way that the movement sort of integrates with how the watch looks, but this is essentially one of the best chronographs ever produced by any watchmaker. And so, first off, Stephen McDonald, I doubt you're listening to this, but you are pure genius. You have created something. You've created multiple things with the. If we look back at the LM Perpetual, you created one of the best perpetual calendar movements ever, and now you've created one of the best chronograph movements ever. And then a big shout out to Max Buser and everyone at MB&F for being able to find these watchmakers and giving them a platform to do exactly what they do, and that is is basically just create and create the best watchmaking that they can. It really is an accomplishment, and so excited for you, for all of the people involved with the MAD 1 and the LM Sequential Evo. Really great award ceremony. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about the winners. We'll move on to the Swiss watch exports for the month of September 2022. So Swiss watch exports grew particularly strong in September at 2.2 billion francs. They achieved one of the highest values in their history thanks to an increase of 19.1% compared with September 2021. 9 months into the year, exports already stand at 18.1 billion francs, 12.6% higher than last year. I believe the last time I was on here, I thought that things were going to slow down as we went into the summer, but clearly September showed resilience to Swiss watch exports, which I think is a great story. To be honest, I think macroeconomically people are on edge about a recession, but it hasn't really hit as heavily. We are seeing some big companies like Meta and Twitter and Amazon who have announced that they're probably going to be laying off some workers, and so I think that might be the start of it, maybe. Who knows? But up until this point, I think we probably will have fairly good results into October and maybe halfway through November. We'll have to see what happens for the rest of the year. The 12-month moving average is around that 10%, let's call it 12.6% mark, so pretty significant there. All materials made significant contributions in the general growth of the value of exports. By the numbers, the other materials category increased by 168,000, which was 63% more compared to September 2021, which drove up total volumes pretty significantly. Conversely, steel watches actually dropped by 4.3%, and those made up of other metals also lost ground of about negative 26%. But overall, the number of items that were sold were up by about 4% in 9 months. Price categories showed fairly good results. The only thing that was down was between 200 and 500 Swiss francs, which were down in double digits. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can read through this, but all price categories were pretty resilient. Top 6 markets were the US, China, the United Kingdom, Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore in that order. They all made up about 56% of the total market share of all Swiss watch exports. All of them had fairly good results. US at 33% up, China up by 15%, United Kingdom up by 18%, Japan up by 34%. The only country that was not up was Hong Kong, which was down by 2.8%, and Singapore was up by 38%. Most other markets also recorded double-digit growth, including China, the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, and South Korea, among others. So again, fairly good results for Swiss watches. We'll have to see what happens for the rest of the year, but I can imagine that maybe next year, if things go south economically, we might see a pullback in some of these results. As I mentioned, there'll be links in the show notes to everything that we've discussed, so be sure to check that out if you want to look at some of the pictures of the watches that I discussed from the Sotheby's Important Watches auction, or check out the prize list from GPHG. It'll all be in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. Hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to or follow this podcast if you like podcasts about watches, and share it with a friend who is interested in watches as well. If you are feeling generous and wouldn't mind rating this podcast, it really does help me out. Check out our website, lifefromthewrist.com, for more watch content, and our YouTube channel if you want to get some more content over there. Check us out on social medias. We'd love to interact with you about watches. So don't feel shy. Drop us a line. We'd love to talk about anything that you want in the watch world. With that said, guys, thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and until next time.